Welcome to Cupertino Insight. My name is Dorothy Cornelius. I'm the City Clerk for the City of Cupertino and your host for this program. Here in the studio with me today are Reed Sparks, Cupertino City Council member, and Steve Dowling, our Director of Parks and Recreation. Welcome to Cupertino Insight, Reed and Steve. It's nice to have you here today.
It's nice to be here.
While you're here, there are several things I'd like to talk with you about. First of all, Reed, how did you become interested in Parks and Recreation?
Seems like this goes back centuries, but it was in the early 70s we had a park bond issue. And I was working for the Recreation Department at the time, and it failed, if I remember, the bond issue. And one of the council members at the time said, well, Reed, if you're so interested in parks, you should run for the city council. And so lo and behold, I ran for the city council, and that's how I got on and involved.
Oh, so you really do have a long-rooted interest in Parks and Recreation since you did work for that department.
I suppose when I started out, I always thought that, well, in a sense, the money kind of came from heaven. It just kind of showed up, and the parks were all built. And then when I got on the city council, I found out that it takes money to build parks, and a lot of money for maintenance, and a lot of money for these other things. So it's been quite an experience trying to do what I said we were going to do in the early 70s, and hopefully we're going to do a little bit more in the 80s and the 90s. So
very good. Speaking of purchase of parks, I realize that part of that standard comes from what we call the open space element of the general plan.
Right.
Could you explain to us a little bit about that and how a city determines that?
Yeah, every 10 years we have a general plan review, and so this is in the early 70s. We came up with how many acres we were going to need for open space in the city and how many acres we're going to need for park development and things like Memorial Park and these type of things. And so every 10 years we do that. We've just got done doing our general plan for hopefully the next 10 years. And in there we have some ideas of future growth for the parks, what we're going to do, school acquisition and these kinds of things.
I see. Now you did work for our department.
That's right.
I know every summer we hire students.
That's what I was.
Work in the parks.
That's, in a sense, it's kind of work experience. I'd like to, I suppose, this is out in the audience for any 14, 15-year-old out there that would like to get a hold of Steve Dowling over here. He's looking for volunteers, and what this will give you is it'll give you an experience in the recreation program if you're 14 or 15. It'll give you work experience, so during your later high school years and your college years, you can go into recreation to get you through those years if you need a little extra money to go to college and these type of things. So that's how I started out. When I was 14, I was a junior aide. You get lots of volunteer hours. You don't get much money, but little pen money and things like that. But there's no, you're not paid until you're 16. And then when you're 16, we have a recreation aid program that's I think up to $3.50 an hour now.
That's what the going rate is.
When I started, it was 85 cents. So you can see out there that things have changed. And then we have a recreation leader program, which is basically what, 18 to 20.
That's correct.
18 to 25, basically, and that's $3.75 to $4.15 an hour. And then we have our senior leader program, and from senior leader, I went on to the went on the city council, and now I make about $4 an hour.
I don't think you mentioned that part.
That's right.
I'd like to add here that it's been our experience that future employers, after young people have worked with us, are very much impressed by an applicant's experience working with the recreation department. Now, we can't guarantee that they're all going to go on and become council members, as Mr. Sparks has done.
That's good.
But it is very good work experience and an educational process.
Well, I think it's a nice way for the young people to spend their summers, too.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I think the nice thing is you work with all segments of the community. You work with senior citizens, you work with young children in preschool, you work with college students, and you also work with the neighborhoods throughout you're working with. So it's a good experience.
Okay. I know that every spring we have some very special events put on by our Parks and Recreation Department. Steve, what do you have in store for us this spring?
Well, let me give you a few ideas. Our annual event is, of course, our Spring Festival, and that's an activity conducted at Memorial Park, primarily for the youth. Now, we start that day with a 10K fun run for all ages, and we culminate that day with a visit by the Easter Bunny. So all activities are free with the exception of the fun run, and we encourage everybody to come out to Memorial Park Saturday, April 14th. We'll be there from 8 in the morning till about 1 in the afternoon with events for all ages. Something new that we're doing this spring that we're kind of excited about is a program called Give Back to McClellan Ranch Day. Now, for those that don't know, McClellan Ranch is the city's designated rural preserve, and there's about 13 acres there that will, for the time being, not be developed and remain as a nature preserve. We have had, with all the winter rains, a problem with thorn thistle in the park, and it is inundating this rural preserve and eliminating a lot of the natural environment, and as well as impacting some of the critters that live there. So April 28th, we are going to ask volunteers from the community to meet with us at McClellan Ranch Park, and we are going to have a posse go out into the field and pull those weeds right out of the ground.
Reed, you going to join the posse?
I bet he'll be there.
28th, I put that down, you see.
And then we're going to give a free lunch donated by some local business people to all those who help us out.
Oh,
I
that's
like that, free lunch. That's
That's
another,
right.
That's another reason.
One
We'll
more
all
thing I'd
be
like to
there.
mention is that our spring classes will begin around the 1st of April, and registration for those will begin starting in March.
Okay. There's something that's very important that our city gets involved with every year, and that's De Anza Day.
Ah, yes. Our role this year is going to be, again, with our expertise in working with younger kids, we are going to provide for the youth population a carnival on campus on De Anza Day. And this will be free game booths for the youngsters. And then we're going to bring on a petting zoo at McClellan Ranch Park. The 4-H Club has some live animal exhibits, so that day they will come on campus here for De Anza Day and give kids a chance to touch goats and sheep and ducks and chickens on a first-hand basis.
That should be a lot of fun.
And a lot of cleanup.
Yeah. Yeah. Reed, you don't have to volunteer for that one.
Well,
Reed, Steve, I want to thank you both a lot for being here today. It's been really informative and a lot of fun. I appreciate the fact that you took a time out of your busy schedules to be here.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having us.
Okay. Recently, I had the opportunity to talk with Cupertino's Planning Director, Jim Sisk, regarding land use planning in Cupertino. I'd like to show you a tape of that meeting.
The Planning Department actually involves a Department of Planning and Development, which is the city planning function, and the building inspection code enforcement function to assure that buildings that are built in the field are consistent with the community goals. The city planning function is one that provides professional advice and expertise to the Planning Commission and City Council, whose primary job is to develop a general plan for the community and to implement that general plan through adopting zoning ordinances and processing projects to assure that they're consistent with that plan. This is a copy of the land use map, which is a part of the general plan. This is the entire planning area for the city, which involves the corporate limits of the city and some surrounding area in the hillsides area and some incorporated area in the Monte Vista area. What this map designates is the land uses that the various properties can be put to, identifying the residential areas, the commercial areas, the town center, and then the various parks and open space areas. This document is the text of the general plan, which contains all the policy statements, the various guidelines for development within the community. The first contact with City Hall is for development of property is made generally with myself or my assistant. We discuss the project to attempt to make some kind of determination generally as to whether or not that project is consistent with the general plan. Once that can be made, then the applicant and his designers will commence to prepare a very precise plan demonstrating the actual use of that property down to setbacks, parking spaces, landscaped areas, building heights, and so on. This plan is then brought back to the planning department, where our planners begin to review that plan for very specific code requirements. Once those once determinations are made that the plan is consistent with the various ordinances applying to that particular piece of property, the application is taken to the city's Environmental Review Committee. The city's Environmental Review Committee is a committee composed of one city council member, one planning commission member, the city's public works director, myself, and the city manager. That committee's job is to review a project to make a determination as to whether or not an environmental impact report would be necessary as an informational document to be reviewed at the time the project goes through the public review process, the public hearing process. Once the Environmental Review Committee makes a determination that a report is not necessary, then the Planning Department will schedule the project for a hearing before the Planning Commission. That scheduling is done in time to allow the department to notice the public hearing in the paper and to inform all property owners within 300 feet of the property that a hearing is going to be held concerning a particular proposal. The Planning Department staff then continues to work on the proposal to assure consistency and reviews the application with the city's Architectural Site Approval Committee. This, again, is a five-member citizens group who reviews proposals to assure that they're architecturally consistent with the surrounding area and the goals of the community on a broader scale. Once the Architectural Review Committee makes a recommendation on the plan, then their report is incorporated into the Planning Department's staff report, which will then proceed with the other plans to the Planning Commission for a public hearing. At that public hearing, the Planning Department will make a presentation relative to our concerns and the consistency of that plan with the city's goals, general plan, and various applicable ordinances. The property owner applicant, his designers, make a presentation relative to the merits of the plan and very detailed architectural concerns that may be voiced by the Planning Department or by the Planning Commission. Then the hearings are opened up to the general public to speak concerning expressing their concerns relative to the project and its impact on neighborhoods, individual homes, the community at large, and so on. This hearing process at the Planning Commission level will culminate with a recommendation on the part of the Planning Commission to the City Council, either for approval of the project or for denial of the project. Their action is documented by virtue of them adopting a resolution, which is an official document stating their action, and then that is forwarded on to the City Council level. The City Council then in turn will hold a public meeting wherein they will review the proposal, will review the Planning Commission's recommendation, will review the Planning Department staff reports, and then they will make a determination as to whether the project should or should not be approved. Dorothy, this is a typical plan that is reviewed at the Planning Commission and City Council level when a project has been submitted and goes through the public review process. What we're looking at is the residential component of the Cupertino Town Center plan, which, as you know, is located directly across the street from City Hall. This is a architectural drawing of the configuration of the residential structures that will be a part of that development. As you'll note, they're roughly 2.5 stories in height with under-building parking for the individual units. This project has 248 residential units, which are condominium units, meaning that each individual unit will be sold Additionally, from an overall site standpoint, we review the site layout and its relationship to the surrounding land use and the surrounding public facilities such as street access and things of that nature. This is, as I indicated, a site plan which demonstrates the location of the individual units, the open space areas, any recreational facilities that are going to be provided by the project, and of course the office building and its adjacent parking facilities. This document, in fact, once approved by the City Council, becomes the document utilized to assure that when the project is built in the field, that it's built consistent with all the approvals and the goals of the community relative to open space and landscaping.
Land use is multifaceted, and things are very interrelated. The general plan is a plan for the land use and all of its implications throughout the city. And we look at not only the use of specific pieces of land, but also their the housing, their traffic impacts, the geological hazards, the character of the community, what it will look like, just anything that you possibly can think of that would be related to what happens when you use the land is in the general plan.
These guidelines for future growth are in fact a commitment on the part of the city after public input by the citizens of the community in assuring the community that that Cupertino will ultimately be the kind of community everybody wants it to be. So in order for anything to take place, it has to be found to be consistent with that blueprint for the future.
Now that we know a little bit about the planning process and planned growth, how about a glimpse into Cupertino's past and what it used to look like? Here with me today are Joanne Minnick, Catherine Gasich, and Louis Paviso. Joanne has put together a series of slides showing some historical sites of Cupertino. Joanne, why and when did you prepare this slideshow?
Well, several years ago, Dorothy, it struck me that there wasn't much of an emphasis on local history. So I, with the help of Deanza, gathered some slides together and put it in my drawer and forgot about it. Then when the Cupertino had its 25th anniversary in 1980, the slides came out of the drawer and a tape was prepared that was synchronized, and we have now the slideshow.
Why do you feel it's important to keep such historical records and for a person to be aware of his or her heritage?
Well, as I look around, there are so many people from so many places living in Cupertino. And we need to feel kind of a uniting feeling that we're all members of this community and we're all going in the same direction. So it's very important to have a sense of the past so we can plan on the future.
Catherine and Louis are sister and brother, and they're here today to share some of their memories and experiences of living in Cupertino from many years ago. We're going to see some of Joanne's slides now, and they're going to share those experiences with us.
This is Callie's brother's building, which was along where the railroad tracks were in front of it, and that was an interurban car that went from San Jose to Palo Alto. You want to say anything?
Yeah, Callie started a long time ago. The first truck he had was an old traffic, if anybody knows what a traffic truck is.
No?
And then he got some old Faduls. That there is that might be a big Fadul. And that's the end of that one now.
What's this?
I
don't know. It looks like Mrs. Bertner.
Yes, it does look like Mrs. Bertner.
Former or resident of Cupertino?
Yeah, Mr. Bertner worked in the old Cupertino store for years. He was their bookkeeper.
Oh.
This is, I don't know whether those are apricots or prunes there.
Can't tell
Could be apricots. Apricots were put out to dry in the sun. They're still dried in the sun. You can dry prunes in a dehydrator, but you can't dry apricots in a dehydrator. You want to say something?
Yeah.
Tell them you used to get a nickel to cut a tree.
Oh, that's Ely up there on that tree. That was taken on the old Mrs. Craig's place. They're picking apricots. That was on Homestead Road. That was in about the early 20s.
Now, this is a picture of some barrels. Our father was a cooper, and that evidently is a cooper shop, but I don't know where that picture, someone said it might have been taken up at Piketty's, but I don't remember Piketty's having a Cooper shop because they used to bring their barrels down to my father's shop to be fixed. Isn't that right, Catherine?
Where was your father's shop?
Where my garage is now was the
Ah,
shop.
okay.
This is the old W.T. Bear blacksmith shop. That's Charlie Bear's father. He was the blacksmith, not Charlie Bear. Charlie Bear was an auto mechanic. And now you want to say something?
I used to take our horse there many times to have it shoed, and they had the big forge there. Oh, this is Alexander Montgomery. He was the uncle of Arch Wilson, who ran the Cupertino store. And this is the Cupertino store.
This Cupertino store sold everything except hay. Now that's the truth.
Even men's clothing.
Pipe, cement, wheat and grain. Cali took the wheat and grain business away from him, but up to then, it's where you got your stuff. You got coal oil and pipes and cement and everything in this store. They even had a little drugstore in the store.
And food, too.
This is an old picture, must have been in 1915 when they paved the road from Saratoga to Sunnyvale. And I used to sleep on that road, play in the dirt. Sleep there now.
These are men who worked in the Cupertino store at the counter, or standing in the background is Mr. Bertner, and then Art Jenkins, the man in the overalls, and Con McCarthy. I don't know who that other man is.
Is that William Calvert in the extreme
He
left-hand
used to
corner?
work at the store, but
I think it is.
see if we
It
have
could be
any-
Mr. Calvert.
Yeah. This is a Cupertino garage. That's Charlie Bear, the auto mechanic. That's an old Peerless. He made it's a V8 Peerless. He made a tow car out of it. It used to belong to Fred Goodrich. And that little dog with him, his name was Reno. And he went to San Jose one time, lost that dog, and boy, he moped more about that dog than if he'd lost his wife.
This is Collins School. That's my alma mater. I went there when the building previous to this one, when it was a one-room schoolhouse in 1908, I think it was, when I first attended there. And then I graduated from there, and there were 8 of us in the class, 3 girls and 5 boys.
And I went there up to the 6th and a half grade, and then we moved to Stevens Creek Road when they consolidated the schools. Is this the same school or is this Lincoln?
This must be Lincoln.
This is Lincoln School. Bill Calvert went to Lincoln School.
This is your alma mater.
Oh, this is the school that they built in 1922. We moved down there at Christmas time. And then the next year, for the full year, I was the first class to graduate for a full year in 1922. Mr. Sedgwick was our principal starting that year. This is the old Collins School again. You want to say
But
something about
this is the Collins School now as of today, and it is the Dioro Club, a women's club, clubhouse. And they own the building and the property.
It was named Collins School because Mr. Collins gave that land. There's also a road named Collins over in the Sunnyvale district. Now, what is this, Councilman? That could be the Piketty place.
Yes, I think it is.
Yeah, that's Piketty.
Must have been a gathering, a family
Yeah,
gathering.
They always had big parties up there. Whoever came along, they would feed them, give them all the wine they wanted to drink.
This is a picture taken when the Interurban went to Saratoga, and this is at Congress Springs. And the group of people would take excursions and go there. They had good water there, and it was a
Picnic ground.
picnic ground. At one time, there was a big hotel there, but it burned down. There's some trees in
This
bloom.
is a farm orchard. I don't know whose it would be. The whole valley was white with prune blossoms at one time.
This is the doorway to the Piketty Winery up on top of Montebello. And I don't know exactly when it was built, do you?
No.
But when the Pikettys first went up there, they built it. This looks like a part of the parish house of E.J. Parrish's home on Stevens Creek
Well,
Boulevard, where the park is today, where the senior center building is.
That's
it.
all, huh?
That's it. Okay, that was really fascinating. Joanne, is that slide presentation available for people who might be interested in checking it out?
It sure is, Dorothy, and they can just contact the Park and Recreation, and they can take that to their home or school or office and take a look themselves.
I'm assuming that Catherine and Louie do not come with the slides.
That probably could be arranged too.
How many slides do you have?
There are 80 in this slide tray with a cassette that's synchronized so that you can listen and watch at the same time.
Okay. Thank you all very, very much for coming here today. That was really enjoyable.
It was fun.
Yeah, it was fun. I'd like to have you both back again, all three of you back again, and maybe we can do some more slides or something, or just
If we
listen.
do, then
I'm
we're
about
off the
the
camera
oldest.
now, aren't we?
No.
Oh, we're not?
I came to
Look at somebody
Cupertino.
picked it first to identify them better.
I came to Cupertino in 1905 in October. I was just a little girl then, and the following April was the big fire, the big earthquake.
Earthquake, yes.
And I remembered it knocked me out of bed, and we could see up towards San Francisco where the sky was all red. And my mother had to cook out on some bricks outside because they had to examine the chimney to see if it was all right. And that morning when I got up, it knocked me out of bed, and so I went to the dining room door. Is this all right to be telling this?
Sure.
And I stood there, and here comes my father with a lamp in his hand, a lighted coal oil lamp, and he, instead of blowing it out, he's trying to go outdoors with it, and a big shock threw him into a corner of the room, and I can still see him standing there with his hands out like this, holding the lamp in his hand. And then I looked the other way, and the floor was just covered with dishes and rice and flour and broken eggs and everything that was knocked out of the pantry. So I really have vivid
Memories.
memories of that day.
Right. Okay. Once again, thank you both very much for being here today. And Joanne, I'll be seeing you around City Hall, I'm sure.
Well, it was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Last year, the residents of the Laurelhurst neighborhood here in Cupertino approached City Council about setting up a neighborhood watch program. In August, Council approved that request. And now I'd like to show you one of the residents in that area and what's been done about that program.
My family was a victim of a burglary, and we felt that after looking at various options for increasing protection in the home, that neighborhood watch type of program might be the best method to go. Having the neighbors watch your home while you're away, having that evidence of a program, in effect, might prevent a second burglary occurring for our own personal home. But also, this neighborhood is probably 50% where the both adults do work, and there's probably 50% where there are at least one adult at home, which makes it fairly conducive for a neighborhood watch program to be effective. What we did with Laurelhurst was we approached the city to be sponsored by the city as a pilot program, and the whole emphasis was we wanted the physical street signs that are actually national recognized sign, and in coordination with Bob Urista, who is the Community Services Officer with the City of Cupertino, and Mr. Quinlan, the City Manager. We asked them what we had to do in order to be officially recognized as a neighborhood watch program.
It is a pilot program in that the Laurelhurst neighborhood is the first neighborhood, the association is the first in the city of Cupertino to receive some backing and support from the city of Cupertino. This was met by a commitment of at least 80% on the part of the homeowners to become actively involved in a neighborhood watch program. The city then provided, at city expense, the signs that are up in the neighborhood. The city bought the signs and put them up simply because there was a commitment of greater than 80% of the homeowners in the area. The city felt that this was a time where they could get some publicity from the homeowners association and also spread the word that the city was behind and encouraged such a program, that the homeowners should start thinking about banding together and protecting themselves against the criminal element, what little there is in Cupertino.
When we instigated the Neighborhood Watch program, we coordinated with the Sheriff's Department to have an initial seminar or session where the Sheriff's Department actually put on a short film strip of other Neighborhood Watch type programs, answered basic questions about protection, and then offered the attendees of the session a free inspection of their home, whereby the officers would come out and actually look at the type of protections that you currently had and make recommendations where they thought improvements could be made, or told you that what you had was quite adequate. So it gave you that extra sense of security, so to speak. Well, the basic aspect of Neighborhood Watch was you don't want to get physically involved, but if you observe something that looks odd to you, what we have done in Laurelhurst is we've provided each resident with the Sheriff's Department dispatch number, so that if they observe something that looks odd to them, what they should be doing is trying to get a description of the individuals involved, as good as they can, type of clothing, color of hair, if there's vehicles involved, make of the vehicle, if at all possible, the actual license number of the vehicle. That's difficult to do when they're speeding by, but if it's parked on the street, one can go out, pick up one's newspaper, take the garbage out, whatever, and get a look at the license plate. Reporting that immediately to the Sheriff's Department is very imperative, because the Sheriff's Department said they'd rather get 10 false leads than to miss the one that's valid.
I think a Neighborhood Watch program will enlighten the people more to the fact that they are vulnerable. Everybody's vulnerable to a degree, depending upon how much caution and care you want to take in securing your own property, your own home, your own business as well. And there's a direct relation in the amount of time and consideration you take in securing your property to the loss that you may experience or suffer later on.
It's kind of too early to tell as far as how effective the program is going to be, but I think the neighborhood has there's a bonding that's going on. We know each other. We know we can call up each other, and in the essence of it, bringing the neighborhood closer together, it was well worth the time and effort involved.
Bob Urista will give Council feedback regarding the degree of success of that program sometime this fall. In the meantime, 2 other neighborhoods in Cupertino have requested his help in starting up a Neighborhood Watch program. Tonight at their meeting, Council will decide the fate of the Solid Waste Advisory Committee and continued research into recycling and methods of solid waste disposal. In addition, a citizen has requested that Council enact an ordinance that would prevent the use of Bryan Canyon as a landfill site without a vote of the people. Council will also sit as a building code appeals board. A resident of Cupertino wishes to increase the depth of his swimming pool, and the method used is not precisely that of the Uniform Code. However, deviations are allowed if they meet certain standards. Tonight, Council will decide whether or not those deviations meet those standards. Thanks very much for watching tonight, and stay tuned for the City Council meeting.